Welcome back to Beyond Belief. I'm your host, Tyler Redman, and I'm so happy to be here today. But first, let's talk about what anchors you down. Oh my gosh, guys, I am so happy to be back. I took an unexpected break last week, so there was no podcast episode. If you haven't noticed already, I'll be honest, guys. I didn't plan on skipping a week. I know we talked about how I want to have 37 episodes this year. Maybe we still get there. Maybe it's going to be 36, or maybe I need another break. Um, but let's be real with you all today, okay? Um, I really struggled last week. Last week was hard. Typically, I find on Mondays or Tuesdays is like a topic drops in my spirit, and I get all these ideas that just rush through, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I can't wait to talk about it. I can't wait to just share my opinion and just hear back from engagement and what other people's opinions are of what I've talked about. But that didn't happen. And then I started thinking, I received some feedback here recently about my podcast from some friends who had talked about how uh, they've watched the reels, and that's great, and I appreciate the support there. And they're like, but I haven't watched an episode yet, um, because they don't necessarily agree with the format, or they don't think it's something that they would enjoy watching yet, but they support me and they're there for me. And I think, unfortunately, we came to a point that kind of affected me enough to where it's made me rethink some things. Um, but the thing is, at the same time, I don't know if who I got the feedback from is my target audience. And so again, I came to this point of being very conflicted, and I know where I want this show to go, and hopefully you all are there with me along the way, and I know what I want to do, but it it's a it takes growth, right? Like, unfortunately, I didn't become TikTok famous. I didn't do something ridiculous on YouTube and get all these followers, and then use that cloud, or that fame that I gathered from doing something of nonsense and of no real value, and just capitalizing on that, and launched a podcast with 1 million subscribers right away with celebrity guest. But this podcast was never meant to be something like that. Like, I've always envisioned there would be real discussion, there would be a real depth to my podcast that you're not finding everywhere else. I know when I was designing my podcast, and I designed it far longer than I've been um, creating one. I always knew I wanted to talk about life, and I wanted to talk about politics, and I wanted to talk about my faith, and how you navigate all three of those, because they all hold such value. I mean, obviously my life is important to me, and your life should be important to you as well. If not, you need to seek guidance there. And politics, it's such a controversial thing, but I've been so in love with the dynamic. Um, uh, it's always been a draw to me ever since I remember 8th grade in middle school. Like, that's where that first earning and just love and joy of politics really stems from. So much so that, again, I've mentioned it before, but I went to college and one of my two majors was political science because I wanted to know it more and I wanted to engage with other individuals who had that same care and passion, um, even though they almost everyone shared a different viewpoint. But that was fine because it was never about pushing my viewpoint on others. It was about learning and engaging with others and their viewpoint and connecting the dots and being able to uh, provide my viewpoint in a way that wasn't tearing them down. And it was a great time. And then religion and my faith, it's everything that there is to me. I mean, it truly is. If I look at my life in the last 2 years, and there is so much joy and love and peace, and there's so much substance and value in my life now that I really didn't have before. And that stems all from my faith. It stems from my relationship with God. It stems from this everyday life and walking with Christ and crucifying my own flesh and saying, Lord, not my will, but let thy will be done through me. And it's completely changed my life and added so much value. And sometimes I'm so full that I can't even put it into words. And I had this life now where I'm so blessed to be around my family, and I love my family so much. And my nephew, oh my God, just to hear that he asks about me every single day, and to see him and hear him go, Ty, it's all, everything in my life is coming together. And so I understand if this podcast isn't the format you want. And I understand if I'm not someone that you want to listen to. And that's fine. If that's the case, then don't. But if this isn't the right format, if this isn't what you don't enjoy, fine. Watch what you enjoy. But I'm trying to create something of substance. I'm trying to do something that I don't think there is a lot out there. And there's a podcast for everything, right? But at the same time, there's not a podcast with substance in everything. And there's not me in every podcast. And what I add, I can bring so much value to. And so if you're one of those people who say, well, I just don't think a podcast with one person, like that's overdone. Fine, maybe it is overdone. I don't plan on this podcast being just me forever. I want to have guests, and eventually when I'm at that point, we will have guests. We will have several guests, uh, but we're just starting. Even if I had 1 million subscribers, I don't even have enough podcast episodes to release that I could monetize on Spotify. Like I make nothing from this podcast. All I am doing is giving my own thoughts and opinions out into the world, and whatever happens happens. And I pray before each podcast, and I ask God to bless it, and if he does, it's great, and I rejoice and I praise him for it. And if he doesn't, it's great, and I praise him and I thank him for it. Because just the act of doing this podcast in and of itself is the fulfillment for me, right? Because I'm bettering myself, and I think that's one of the main reasons that I've wanted to do this for so long. And I'm so happy to be here. And honestly, guys, I know this podcast has potential to reach the thousands and even millions, but we're what, 3 months in. I've read most podcasts don't have real traction until 6 months, and then I've read people have 3 years of podcast, 200 plus episodes, and they have a very small following. And that's okay. If I only ever have a small following, that is fine. That is more than enough for me because the number of followers has never been the main priority. And I just wanted to share that with you all today, guys. Um, I actually thought that was going to be maybe 3 or 10 minutes, or sorry, 3 or 5 minutes, but I've been talking to you all about 10 minutes or so on that. And thank you for listening. I do have a topic today, and as I mentioned the other day, I'm trying to be less from notes. Like I want a couple things I'm going to touch on today, but I don't want to be reading um, from my notes that I've thought up as well. So we'll just see how it flows, and if it's good, great. If it's not, that's okay too. Like I was just saying, it's not about being the absolute best out there. It's about being the best I am today. But what I wanted to talk about today is what keeps you anchored. Where are you grounded? And I it's funny, my boss at work actually the other day gave me this journal that she had gotten at her church. I believe it was for Father's Day. I'm not a father, just to clarify. But the cover of the journal is like a godly man keeps his family anchored in God. I think I messed that quote up, but that's loosely what it says. And it hit me. What keeps you anchored? And so I wanted to go ahead and look and dig out how does an anchor operate? Because when I think of an anchor, it's that metal anchor, and you just throw it off the ship, and it catches the ground, and it I don't know, you get lucky and it grabs a rock, and that rock just keeps you in the anchor in place. And sure, you might drift some, but I realized I didn't truly understand the way an anchor works. Even on a small riverboat, an anchor, instead of digging into the ground, it's just a heavy weight to kind of keep you in place. But I went ahead, I Googled, because that's what people my age do. We Google. I Googled, how does an anchor work? And this came from boated.com, Boaters Education. Surely they know about anchors. And an anchor works by digging into the seabed's mud, sand, rock, or gravel and holding fast. Many people think that the weight of an anchor is what keeps the boat in place, but this is a misconception. The blades or flukes of the anchor dig into the seabed and create resistance to hold the vessel in one location. And I thought that was so incredibly fascinating. The blades are digging in and creating resistance. And I think of just people in the church, or people who are new to the church, and even people who've been in the church forever. No one really approaches resistance well. Sure, there can be some exceptions, and some people who really handle resistance with just this grace and this poise, and just this something. um, and they do well with resistance, but the vast majority, I think we could say, do not find comfort in resistance. And that's good. Resistance isn't meant to be comfortable. Um, but it made me think, because originally I was going to relate what keeps you anchored, and I had it in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to talk about Jesus and the building the house on a rock, not on the sand. And I think that still could easily be drawn in, and I think that's great. But then I read this definition, and it made my brain just explode. The blades of your anchor are digging into the seabed and creating resistance. So the very thing that you feel like is holding you back, or or keeping you down, at the same time can be an anchor that is for your good, because resistance isn't always to prevent you from your next level. Sometimes it's preventing you from falling. Instead of an anchor, think of like if you're a rock climber, and they also use, I believe it's called like a anchor that they put into the rock wall, and it clips on and it digs into the rock to hold you steady, because that's what an anchor does. An anchor keeps you steady at where you're at. And sometimes you need to be anchored in place so that you're not moving to the left and you're not moving to the right, but you're staying steadfast in God's will for your life. And I think that is just mind blowing. And it's so simple. It's so simple, and yet we overcomplicate it. I sure do. I overcomplicate everything. I am an overcomplicator. I will sit here and overthink. Let's be honest, overthinking. That's why I didn't have a podcast episode yet last week. Overthinking. Is it a good excuse? No. But it holds me back, and it anchored me in a place of resistance and fear. Because an anchor can be good and an anchor can be bad, but you have to know what the anchor is being dug into. That's good. That is so good. I gotta be honest, guys. Sometimes I just be talking about these subjects and just my thoughts, and that is some good stuff. I know it's surface level, and I think a lot of it can be surface level, but there is just such breakthrough, because if you can break through the surface like the anchor breaks through the surface of the seabed, then you can get into some deepness. And I think that's what this podcast is. Like I know I mentioned I want there to be some deepness and richness, but sometimes you have to be breaking the crust of a thing to even get to those deep places. I didn't even know where that came from, but that was good. Guys, this is not a normal podcast today, and that's okay. Again, I don't have notes, and I think I'm going to keep going this way. And we're going to have a guest one day. In fact, I know my brother is going to be a guest. He's promised me 2 episodes. And you don't know how hard I've been working to get him on here. And I can't promise more than 2 episodes. You might like him more than me, and that's not going to roll with me because it's my show. It's not his show. But we're going to have 2 episodes, and I think he's going to bring some really great insight. And you know what? If you know anyone, put them in the comments that you would like to be on my podcast. And it can be anyone. I don't care. I will do what I can to reach out. Um, Honestly, is it going to be a Zoom episode podcast? Sure, it probably will be. And you know what? I'm going to edit it so well. And it's going to be great. It's going to be great. But guys, I think that is all I have for you today. Again, I know this isn't a normal podcast episode. There's no political moment. Um, I think I'm gonna rest that segment for a while. Not that there's not a lot going on in the world, but I don't think it flows well in the way that I want. And this might be bad podcasting. I might be doing like the exact opposite of what you should be to do. I'm probably being too transparent, but that's okay. Um, I'm growing, and my audience is growing with me. So if I'm being too transparent now, that's fine. I'll get over it. But I just want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you all for listening. I appreciate every single one of you so much. I appreciate all the feedback, the good, the bad, the feedback that makes me overthink, and the feedback that I don't understand. Um, Again, I just thank you all, and I will see you next week. I don't know what our topic's gonna be, but we're just gonna keep running, and if we end up with 120 episodes of this podcast, and m- maybe there's not a lot of value to anyone, but there's value to me, then that is okay. Um, but I hope you all have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. On Sunday, go to church. Just go. If you're in the Springfield area, I want to invite you to Eagle Heights Worship Center. We have service starting at 11 a.m. You're going to want to be there. I absolutely guarantee it. If you're not in the Springfield, Missouri area, find a church near you. Just go and keep an open mind and be willing to listen. And with that, I wish you all a great evening. Goodbye.